Let me take a minute or two to talk about current events, because I think this administration is the most destructive administration of modern times. I'm going to give you two examples, one of which I only learned about on the way over here this afternoon. Apparently, in the last couple days, Saudi Arabia has signed an agreement with China to build nuclear and power capabilities in Saudi Arabia. Now, the idea that this is a very deliberate signal. This is the Saudis saying that they find the Obama administration so utterly unreliable that they want to begin transferring their relationship to China because they regard the Chinese as more reliable than the United States under Obama. This is a very serious, this has not been covered much in the news media. The expert who sent me the email a few minutes ago asked me to talk about it because he said this is a huge, huge development that our news media just hasn't picked up on. Now there's a second part of the story. Today, the president, in order to appease extremist left-wingers in San Francisco, vetoed the Keystone Pipeline. Now, when I first heard about this, just before a town hall meeting earlier, I used fairly strong language. And I've thought about it for several hours, and I'm not going to change it. Yeah. That's what I say. How did you know that? Did you already hear it from the other place?
No, sir.
You heard it from here?
It was on the radio.
It's on the radio? Yeah, okay, well, I'll repeat it anyway. Well, let me tell you the background. You know, my two debate coaches are Maggie, who's 12, and Robert, who's 10. I call them before every debate. Maggie's a ballerina and is in the Atlanta Ballet for the Nutcracker and has performed for 2,500 people since she was 10 years old. And so she focuses in on the performance phase, and she coaches me on smiling and counts the number of smiles, because I'm such an intense person that I don't smile enough. And so I get my smiling lecture before every debate. And literally when I go into the debate, I will get a piece of paper out and I'll put a big smiley face and write Maggie. Now,
that's why you have Callista.
That's right. Well, Callista's easy to smile at, and in fact, when she's at the debates, if you watch, I will look at her all virtually after every question. If she does this, I'll know I did a really... So far, I've been lucky. There have been no answers where she did, you know. Now, Robert is just got most improved in his chess class, and he's 10. And he basically tells me to be shorter and clearer. But here's what I was thinking about in terms of explaining the Obama administration. Remembering that my grandson at 10 plays reasonably good chess. It's one thing to say to you that a White House doesn't understand chess. It's another thing to say they don't understand checkers. But if they can't play tic-tac-toe, you have to... What? You want to come along and coach me through a couple of times? And here's why I say this. There are two great recent examples. One was back when the president imposed the moratorium in the Gulf against the advice of all of the expert panels that told him it was exactly the wrong thing to do. And I believe the White House did not understand that the deep ocean rigs could move. And I think being anti-business, they thought it was kind of cool because they had these people trapped. They could make them stop, and they'd have to sit there and lose money. But they can move. So the first one left. They only move about 5 or 6 miles an hour, but if you do that long enough, you get somewhere. The first one left, and it went to Egypt. These are $80,000 a year jobs, and wherever they're pumping, they're paying royalties to the government. So Louisiana lost the royalties, the U.S. lost the royalties, Louisiana lost the jobs, and it took up. The second one, though, I really enjoyed because the CEO had a sense of humor. And when they announced that the second one was leaving, he said, because of political instability in the United States, we are now going to develop off the Congo. Now, I want you to think about a government that is so incompetent that the Congo looks stable. So, in that context, let's talk about the Keystone Pipeline. I believe that this administration did not understand that the Canadians have an alternative. There are two ways to get the oil from central Canada. The easy way, the cheapest way, is to bring it due south. You don't have to cross any mountains. And you get it to Houston, which is the largest petrochemical complex in the world. And it goes out of the Galveston and Houston ports. Now that's the way the Canadians would like to have done it. And Prime Minister Harper is a very pro-American, very conservative Canadian. However, if we have an administration so utterly lacking in foresight that it wants to play domestic political games with environmental extremists, the Canadian solution is to get money from the Chinese to go straight west over the Canadian Rockies and deliver it in Vancouver and send it straight to China. Now, it cost us 20 to 50,000 construction jobs. It cost us all the payments for the next 30 to 50 years for the pipeline itself. It cost us all of the processing charges in Houston, and it cost us all of the port activities at Galveston and Houston. Now, this is really stupid on three grounds. It is stupid first because economically we need the money and we need the jobs. It is stupid second because for national security reasons, at a time when the Iranians are practicing closing the Straits of Hormuz, we need to have more American energy, not less. We need more supplies, not fewer. And third, it is truly stupid. I mean, if somebody had said to you 3 years ago, China will seem to be a better partner for Canada than the United States, you'd have thought it inconceivable. I mean, this is the most destructive president in modern times. And it's really dangerous. And now we have the Saudi-Chinese relationship on top of the Canadian-Chinese relationship. And meanwhile, we have a president who hasn't got a clue about the real world. And that's where we are. Now, there is a fairly easy solution to this. He should go home in November. You know, when Ronald Reagan ran against Jimmy Carter, we had 22% interest rates, 13% inflation. We were climbing towards 10.8% unemployment. We had gasoline rationing every other day based on whether or not the last number of your car was. How many of you remember when you had gasoline rationing every other day? My good friend Dave Bossie at Citizens United told me he was 13 that year. And he remembers it vividly because every morning his father gave him a screwdriver and sent him out back to make sure that the car that needed gasoline had the right license plate. Now, well, they had two cars, and they were lucky. One was odd and one was even. Now, I developed from that the following test for your neighbors to see whether they're liberal or conservative. If you tell somebody the U.S. government has adopted a regulation so stupid that we are teaching 13-year-olds how to get around it, and you're a conservative, you say we ought to repeal the regulation. If you're a liberal, you say, you know, that proves we need license plate police at every gas station. So Reagan, in the middle of this terrible economy, developed the following phrase, which you may hear later on this year with some slight modification. He'd say, if your brother-in-law is unemployed, it's called a recession. If you're unemployed, it's called a depression. If Jimmy Carter's unemployed, it's called a recovery. Now, because I know you're a very smart group, I'll let you guess how I might modify that in September.